I thought there was some interesting nuggets there that like show a little bit of how we think about, how we approach campaigns, efficiency, driving campaigns towards the goals that our clients come to us for. And I think it'd be cool to chat about.
At the end of the day, the places we stand out compared to other agencies is that we leverage audience signals at a much higher rate than others, almost twice as many as other agencies. Our audiences that we build are based on the data that our advertisers care about. We really like this RFM model, focusing on recency, frequency, and monetary value when building audiences. That can be for acquisition, so building lookalikes. That can be for engagement audiences or even retention audiences. Of course, we leverage best practices across channels like Meta, leaning into advantage shopping, leaning into automated targeting, and leveraging Conversions API at a higher rate than other agencies. At the end of the day, the platforms are always changing, and we're testing and learning, bringing our strategic audience first approach to testing and customer acquisition. And at the end of the day, our the effectiveness of our spend is much higher than other agencies.
It's interesting because let's talk about Advantage Plus, ASC Plus. It's supposed to be this algorithm driven kind of black box type of thing that basically you tell the algorithm what he wants to do and the algorithm does it, right? It's not that close approach to that like bespoke approach to advertising that happened a lot in the past, but I'm getting there. But what I thought was interesting in this report, it was that sometimes we present ASC plus to clients and they are like a little reticent because they're like, what do you mean we're not going to pick the targeting audience, right? But at the same time, we do leverage custom audiences a lot more than the market
Hmm.
average according to Meta.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting little nugget.
It's
Curious
kind
what
of
you.
shows how we're testing. We're leaning into the new platforms, the black box automated campaign types like Advantage Plus on Meta and Performance Max on Google. But we can't just let it run by itself, because what happens if we do that? It just goes after mid funnel and lower funnel audiences. And we've seen this with accounts that are trying to scale. Sometimes if you just let it run, frequency will get really high on ASC. Branded search, branded terms in Performance Max will take up most of the spend and most of the performance. So it looks like it's great, but it's not actually bringing people in. So we're intentional with excluding engaged audiences and purchasers, so that we're prioritizing bringing in net new audiences with Advantage Plus and with Performance Max, so that we open the top of the funnel, but then have a dedicated mid funnel where those custom audiences come in, and make sure that we're maxing out retargeting and branded search, because you can't just do retargeting and branded search, of course, and you can't just let the algorithms go black box on their own. You have to intentionally control where you're delivering, so that you can fuel acquisition and drive conversions.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It signals that, maybe the right approach is a balanced approach that like you can't sure the platforms are getting better and better at doing it all themselves. But you also need to balance and sometimes depending on the type of client, the type of business, you do need a more custom approach. So it's not either or, but kind of like testing both, trying it out across clients to see what sticks, right? Which
Hmm.
it's kind of an approach that we have. It's kind of like testing, right? Let's they're going towards this. Platforms are going towards this. Let's test it. They're telling us that this is the way. But wait, there's also X, Y, and Z ways. Let's see which one works better for your business, for your company, for your brand.
Yeah, exactly. And with emerging channels like Reels, we're competitive with other agencies in terms of how much we spend there, but it's on the uptick, and year over year it's growing above 20% in investment in Reels. And now there's this inflection moment with the disruption to TikTok. Who knows what's going to happen there? We saw it go dark in the US, then come back. It looks like advertisers' spend is coming back, according to Micmac, for instance. but we still see reels on Instagram and on across Meta placements and YouTube Shorts as a place to really lean into in this moment of disruption. So we're looking at reels as a place to continue to invest as TikTok is increasingly as TikTok's future is increasingly uncertain. At the end of the day, I just think it speaks to how you can't hang your hat on one channel, even if it's a great source of top of funnel, organic, influencer driven traffic and sales. It's too risky to just focus on one channel, especially if it's a channel that has a parent company in China. Like who knows what's going to happen there? And there's no like American tech companies and social platforms don't exist in China. So I think the lack of reciprocity is a fair argument against um, TikTok's continued presence in the US, and therefore leaning into channels like Reels and Shorts. As seen by as demonstrated by our year-over-year investment in Reels, as an example of how we're prioritizing emerging channels to capture user attention and drive performance where our advertisers' audiences spend their time.
We tend to spend to have more effective spend or leverage more effective spend than other agencies in, like against the market, I guess.
Hmm.
But and I thought that was so interesting because, you know, usually when we sit with clients on a new business pitch, right? We we always say that like we do focus on efficient spend, on
Hmm.
efficient campaign. We do not believe throwing money at the problem.
Hmm.
Sometimes you do need the money, but what I'm saying is we tend to focus on efficiency, right? Like what is the goal that we're trying to achieve? Let's spend what's needed to achieve those goals versus the
Hmm.
other way around. Like here's all this money, let's just spend it. And I've said in more than one occasion to clients that um, sometimes clients are like, just spend it. I have the budget, spend it. And we're like, it's not efficient. There's no point. There's like, we
Hmm.
can't, it's not that we can't, but it's like, we don't advise spending more because you're not going to see it's not going to be efficient, right? Like you're already maxing out everything you can at the budget that you have.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was interesting. I thought that shows a little bit of a way that we think.
Yeah, another contrast is we act as fiduciaries for client media investments. We're not just going to say yes if you ask us to spend more. And the fact that we're significantly more efficient with our spend as compared to other agencies kind of speaks to when we do say yes and we do make a recommendation to scale budget, we're going to do it effectively. And we're going to do it in placements where we're going to drive engagement and conversions, like mobile first video spend, which is up triple digits year over year, and where we're competitive with what other agencies are spending. That's where the channels are going, and why we're prioritizing short form video, especially with the disruption of TikTok, leaning into the opportunities that we see. And our effective spend is not just in terms of like all in channel efficiency, but we're also leveraging conversions API at a higher rate than other agencies, because with the loss of data and signal, as the privacy restrictions become increasingly stringent, conversions API is going to help maintain conversion attribution, especially for advertisers with exposure to the more strict states in the US, like California, and for anyone advertising in the EU.
I was gonna ask you about that. Like, what is Conversions API for the folks that might not know?
It's basically server to server, so you can block browser or pixel based uh, tracking, but the server event still happens. So it's not tied to a browser, and just another way to get a deeper signal with less disruption. And it's less impacted by privacy regulations. Of course, we're leveraging it in a privacy safe fashion, but it's just a deeper signal that we get beyond just a browser based pixel. Yeah, so what we're helping clients solve this essential challenge around first attribution and second making decisions around media investments. When you ask, all right, I have these revenue goals, I have this budget to spend, where should I spend it? We're helping clients understand how can we leverage the signals we get in channels like Meta, like
Mm-hmm.
cost per action, ROAS. But the problem is if you look at ROAS across all your different channels, it can be hard to say like where the truth is because it's all the channels are grading their own homework and there's
Exactly.
inflation, there's inflated attribution.
Mm-hmm.
So we're helping clients make decisions around where to increase or decrease spend while monitoring KPIs like marketing efficiency ratio, looking at the proportion of spend versus all-in revenue, or even spend versus new customer revenue. So you can have new customer ROAS, and we're leaning into multi-touch attribution channels like Northbeam or Triple Whale or even Rockerbox for our B2B accounts to help understand what is the blended CPA, what is the blended um, channel, what is the blended perspective that helps us understand where to invest our media dollars.
I think something that's always worth reminding everybody is that, I mean, we can design tests to test rigor rigorously and make sure that the effort that we want to test and uncover is in enough of a vacuum to get a clear signal. But
Mm-hmm.
something that's interesting in to note on what you said is like each platform grades their homework, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each platform is kind of like, look at my ROAS. That's the
Yeah.
whole.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're trying to analyze this cross-channel attribution and
Mm-hmm.
efficiency, it's important to know that unless you design the perfect test, it things don't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So pinpointing is it's very hard. So to your point, like testing these different measurement platforms or making bespoke measurement studies
Mm-hmm.
um, to try to pinpoint what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
then, most importantly, making sure that before you even go there and spend, and if you're truly trying to uncover those things, that it's important to design a test to think
Mm-hmm.
about how are these things going to be deployed to be able to know the answer at the end of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you can't allow the platforms to grade their own homework. It's important to have a third party, whatever that tool is, we can make recommendations. And the landscape is always changing, especially with the loss of data and privacy regulations, making it harder to show attribution. So having an intentional test and learn approach, one thing we like to do, similar to how conversions can be need to be second guessed when the platform's reporting. With brand lift, if you run a first party brand lift study with a channel like Meta, sometimes it's helpful to have another KPI to understand the impact of top of funnel investments. So that's where we'll have like a exposed versus holdout market test, or we'll run a geo lift test or a causal impact study um, to really understand what is the incrementality. Um, and that can really help us assess which channel is driving um, lift. And if we understand like the multi-touch attribution from a performance and conversion perspective, we can also show the lift in awareness and unaided awareness to help understand like when you hit that cap on performance media investment and you're just not scaling, when you move into top of funnel channels like out of home or CTV or audio, having a understanding of the incremental lift on lower funnel KPIs, whether that's sales or leads, or even trying to understand how investments in top of funnel and awareness lift impact even channels like Meta in terms of halo effects like click through rates or CPC or conversion rates. Like what is the incremental impact that you can attribute to these top of funnel investments as you scale up beyond just performance channels?